Give thanks for the good days. When the traffic lights all turn green, when promotions come and bad habits are broken. Give thanks for warm meals and the company of friends. Give thanks for undeniable blessings and clear direction, when the music floods your soul and the worship songs flow without effort. Give thanks for coffee and clothing and hope that the two never mix. Give thanks for the mother who battles daily in prayer, for the father working 3 jobs, for the brothers and sisters who build blanket forts and read bedtime stories. Give thanks for sons and daughters and all our family who remind us of what truly matters. Give thanks for the stranger who holds the door open and the lifelong friend who holds you when life is broken. Give thanks for the hard days, for the phone call that brings life crashing down, for jobs lost and friendships fallen into conflict. Give thanks for the anger that reminds us we are human, and the tears that express more than words could ever fathom. Give thanks, though the pain is overwhelming, your energy spent, your spirit fallen, and your only option is to fall to your knees before your Holy Father and cry out, God, please, help me. For in that moment, His power is made perfect. His love is made evident. He becomes your strength, your comfort, and your salvation. Give thanks for the power of redemption, from Genesis to Revelation, for the endless promises of a God who would rather sacrifice His Son than give up on His children. For nail-pierced hands, for brilliant dawns, for the cool touch of rain and the simplicity of a quiet day. For all things great and small, let us give thanks.
Good morning, Canvas family. Thank you for joining us for our virtual service this morning. We really appreciate you taking your time to join us and to share with us today. So I wanted to thank you all for your help with our Pay It Forward challenge. We were able to feed over 100 families yesterday with our drive-through meal kit giveaway. I'm recording this on Friday, so it feels a little weird to say that, but that's what we know is going to happen tomorrow, is that we're going to be able to bless a lot of families. And so thank you for those of you who donated. Thank you to those of you who volunteered and made it happen. So we do have a work day this afternoon from 1 to 5 p.m. There will be no work day next Sunday due to the Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Please enjoy that time with your family. We will have a virtual service next Sunday as we begin Advent and prepare for the Christmas season. And again, we will continue to have opportunities to work on our building as we work towards hopefully having a service there soon. We love you. We miss you. We hope that you enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday this Thursday, whether you're with family all gathered together or you're celebrating virtually. We pray that that time is blessed for you and your family. Love you. Happy Thanksgiving.
We were waiting without hope, without light, till from heaven you came running. There was mercy in your eyes to fulfill the law and prophets. To a virgin came the word from a throne of endless glory to a cradle in the dirt. God to reveal the kingdom coming and to reconcile the lost, to redeem the whole creation. You did not despise the cross, for even in your suffering you saw to the other side, knowing this was our salvation. Jesus, for our sake you died. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. And the morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath, till that stone was moved for good, for the Lamb had conquered death. And the dead rose from their tombs, and the angels stood in awe, for the souls of all who'd come to the Father are restored. And the Church of Christ was born, then the Spirit lit the flame. Now this gospel truth of old shall not kneel, shall not faint. By His blood and in His name, in His freedom I am free, for the love of Jesus Christ, who has resurrected me. Praise the Father, praise the Son, praise the Spirit, three in one. God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Praise forever to the King of Kings.
Amazing love that welcomes me, the kindness of mercy that bought with blood wholeheartedly, my soul undeserving. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. And should this life bring suffering, Lord, I will remember what Calvary has bought for me, both now and forever. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me. I am blessed, I am gone, I am healed, I am whole, I am saved in Jesus' name. Highly favored, anointed, filled with your power for the glory of Jesus' name. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. God, you're so good. You're so good to me.
Good morning, Canvas Church. Hey, today we continue a series that we started a couple of weeks ago called The Lost Art of Gratitude. We've been looking at God's Word to help us have a new perspective when it comes to being thankful. With all that's been going on in the world around us, with the pandemic and with just the election and all of the other things that are happening in our lives right now during this busy season, we need a change of heart. We need a change of perspective that leads us to a heart of gratitude. So I want to begin today by talking about something that we as human beings do really, really well, and that is complain. We are great. We are awesome at complaining. It amazes me how everywhere, all the time, it seems like people want to pick things apart. They want to find something wrong instead of seeing something that is right. Complaining is almost an art form for our culture. We can easily find something wrong. Some people find anything to complain about, like weather, for instance. It's too hot, or it's too cold, or it's too dry, or it's too wet. I mean, we're heading into winter right now, and so very, very soon we'll be complaining about how cold it is. But then as soon as it gets hot again, we'll wish that it was winter. I mean, it's always that way, right? About 7 years ago, our family went on a trip to Hawaii, and it was amazing. It was one of the best vacations that we've ever taken. We dream about being able to go back there, especially in a year like this. I've dreamt a lot about being in Hawaii. But we went to a place called Waikoloa Village, and I'm not kidding you. They have the most consistent sunny weather of any place I know of. It's 88 degrees there all the time. Like if I was to pull open my phone right now and I was to look up the weather in Waikoloa, it would probably show like a 7 to 10 day forecast where it's 88 degrees every day. No joke. It makes me wonder if people who live there that experience that all the time, if they complain like, you know what, it's just too nice here. It's too nice. We should go to some place where it's like overcast and rainy. Maybe we should go to Eureka, California, because that would be the weather there. No, if you're watching from Eureka, I'm sorry. It is beautiful there, like 2 or 3 times a year. So, but people can complain about almost anything. Now, let me ask you something. How many of you would honestly say you're an average driver? You're not a super great driver, but you're not a horrible driver. You're just an average driver. Now, for those who are listening and watching this, how many of you would say, no, I'm above average driver? So if you think you're an above average driver, that's probably where the problem exists, because when the majority of us believe that we're better drivers than most other people, then we complain about everybody else. I know I do. I am so guilty of that. Like, that idiot's going too fast or going too slow, or he just rolled through the stop sign. I'm one of the worst about complaining about bad driving, because I think I'm probably a better driver than most people. But, you know, which is probably not true. But it's so easy for us to criticize people when they give us tons of reason to do so, right? We complain about all sorts of things. There are people who drive home at the end of the day and they push a button and the door opens and they drive their car into a protected environment. Then they close that door by the push of a button and complain about the bad gas mileage their car gets. They walk into a controlled environment with air conditioning. They open up a refrigerator full of food and they complain because they say, man, there's nothing to eat. They turn on the television with hundreds of television stations and complain that there is nothing to watch. We got Netflix, we got Hulu, we got Prime, we got all these we got Disney, and then we sit there and we're like, man, there's just nothing to watch. We go to our closets and we look across all of our clothes. We touch all these clothes, and what do we say? I can't find anything I've got nothing to wear. It's amazing how blessed we can be, and yet how grateful we often are. And I'll be honest with you, this is an area that I feel personally challenged by as well. Because by nature, it's easier for me to complain than it is for me to be grateful. It just is. Our nature drives us towards wanting more, wanting better, wanting it faster, wanting it more conveniently, wanting it now. That is why it's important for me to cultivate and to pursue a heart of gratitude. Experts have done studies on gratitude and found that it is the key to unlocking so many other positive values. We talked about that when we kind of did an overview of this on week 1. We said that gratitude causes people to become more generous. Generosity and gratitude are, remember, linked together. Gratitude makes you encouraging. Gratitude makes you thankful. Gratitude transforms our hearts from one that often feels entitled to the things that we have to one that gives thanks and looks easily around to see how much blessing has been poured into us. The tragedy is that some people never will experience what it's like to have a true heart of gratitude. Let me show you an example of this. It's a very interesting story found in Luke chapter 17. So in the Gospel of Luke, starting in chapter 17, verse 11, we see a description of some lepers who have encountered Jesus, and we actually see tragically a lack of gratitude. And here's how Luke reports this story. Again, starting in verse 11. Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into the village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and they called out in a loud voice, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. Now, when we read this, it's easy for us to go, okay, there were some lepers, and then just kind of move on, right? But we need to understand the depth of these people's hearts as they're crying out for healing. If you read the Old Testament, in Leviticus chapter 13, it teaches us about what lepers had to do. Leprosy was it was a horrific disease. A leper had to tear his clothes so that people would see from a distance that he had leprosy. Then they had to try to keep their mouths closed as much as possible so that they wouldn't infect anybody. All right, so we kind of get this understanding right now a little bit. We like just a glimpse of it in the fact that we're wearing masks and have to wear masks wherever we go, right? We've got to cover our mouths because we're trying to protect others maybe might be more vulnerable from getting COVID. But I mean, these guys had to do this all the time. They had to do things externally to signal to other people, I have a disease. Stay away from me. I am unclean. They had to cry out and say, unclean, unclean, when anyone else was approaching in order to warn them in advance. Can you imagine that? I mean, we wear masks, and granted, when we're talking about complaining, I complain about the mask. And you know what's the worst thing for me in the mask, really? It's inconvenient because it creates a lip on my beard, right? I probably have one right now as you're watching this because of wearing a mask. And I don't like that, so I kind of grumble about, but it's inconvenient. At most, it's just inconvenient. These guys had a disease, and they were considered outcasts in the culture. Now listen, I've worked for years, Natalie and I have worked and ministered for years with teenagers, and we have raised 2 teenagers, and we have a little one that before we know it, in a blink of an eye, he'll be a teenager as well. And hygiene, when it comes to teenagers, can be a hit or miss thing. It isn't always highest on their list of priorities. Sometimes it gets bumped way down on the list. So, instituting a warning system that let other people know in advance when hygiene is being neglected, that actually does not sound like a bad thing at all. I remember the first time I traveled with a group of students a long distance, driving for hours in a poorly ventilated 15-passenger van with a bunch of junior hires. Man, that gives a completely different picture when it comes to air quality. There was not good air quality in that van. But back to the story about the lepers. The lepers couldn't just keep their condition to themselves. They were forced to make it known in order to keep other people safe. So again, we understand this. Those who test positive for COVID right now, they have to quarantine. They've got to stay away from the public. However, those who had leprosy couldn't just always conveniently just stay at home. They were out in public eye. They couldn't always keep away from crowds of people, or people would approach them. And so they had to make that known. They had to call out and let people know, stay away, I am unclean. So there's the physical suffering from this disease, but then they had to endure huge amounts of rejection socially. You can only imagine how devastating that must be. Think of living your whole life with a condition and not being able to get close to anybody. We've been held back from face-to-face relationships quite a bit over the last 8 and 9 months, right? We've stayed away from large gatherings of people. We're trying to navigate this holiday season and figure out what that's going to look like, because normally we're used to getting together with big groups of people. And so we're trying to figure out, can we do that? Is it, is that going to be safe? How are we going to navigate that? Now imagine if you had done that, not just for 8 or 9 months, but for years, for a good portion of your entire life where you couldn't get close to anyone, not being able to give somebody a hug. So when they see Jesus, they hope that perhaps he can heal them. So from the depths of their heart, they cry out, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. And verse 14 says this, when Jesus saw them, he said, go show yourself to the priests. And as they went, they were cleansed. How amazing is that? As they make their way, they haven't even gotten to the priest yet. As they take off to go to the priest, all of a sudden, these 10 men who had been suffering for years of this terrible disease are healed in an instant. I can't even wrap my head around that. Now, guess what happens next in the story? How many of these 10 guys who have had this miraculous healing, who have cried out to Jesus, and he has responded and shown mercy to them, how many of them would you imagine thank Jesus for that healing? Well, you would think it would be all 10, right? But it was one. Only one. The Bible says one of them, when he saw that he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and he thanked him. And he was a Samaritan. Now, let me point out the significance of, and he was a Samaritan. Samaritans, to interact with Jewish people, those two did not mix. Samaritans and Jews did not mix often at all. Jews looked down at Samaritans. So this kicks this man's gratitude up to a whole level, because not only has Jesus healed him, but he knows Jesus is a Jew and he is a Samaritan. Jesus asked him in verse 17, Were not all 10? Were not all 10 of you cleaned? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner? 10 lives were miraculously transformed. And I'm talking going from no hope at all back to a chance at a normal life again. And only 1 out of the 10 returns, and showing a heart of gratitude. I'll tell you what, this is what challenges me. This is where I stop to think about this, because it's easy for me to judge the other 9 people. It's easy for me to think to myself, well, surely I would have been the one. I would have been the one. But when I really, really stop and pause on that, and I really let God examine my heart, I don't know. I want to be that one. I hope that I would be that one. If there's only 1 out of 10, if there's only 1 out of 100, I want to be that man who has the heart of gratitude. I want to be that one. So how do we do this? How do we stay grateful when it's so easy for us to complain and feel entitled? Well, what I want to do for just the next few minutes is give us 3 principles to look at that will help us to choose gratitude. And these principles, some of them we've touched on already, but these are 3 things that I believe if we adopt and we put to heart, that it will help us to live with an attitude of gratitude. So number 1 is this. This is one we've talked about in week 1, and that is knowing that every good thing I have comes from God. Remember James chapter 1 verse 17? It says every good thing I have comes from God. James tells us every good and perfect gift is from above. Every good and perfect gift. Why? Because God himself is good. As Heather pointed out last week and did such a fantastic job of, this issue at its root has so much more to do with just whether or not we're going to be thankful for the stuff that we have. Because the stuff will come and go. Sometimes we have stuff, other times we don't. And so that really affects more, I would say, of our happiness than it would be our gratefulness and our thanksgiving. Our gratitude should come from a deeper place. Our gratitude should come from a place of being, of understanding who God truly is, and that he is good, and that he loves us, and that he has held nothing back, but he has lavished his love upon our lives, and he deserves our praise. Not because of the stuff that he has given and blessed us with, but because of who he is. Just like as a parent, you want to be loved for not the stuff that you provide for your kids, but because you're their father or you're their mother, because of who you are, not what you do. So, my parents were good examples to me of this, of recognizing that the good things in their life came from God. If you've ever spent any time around my mom is one of the most genuinely upbeat people you'll ever meet. In fact, if you are just wanting somebody to kind of listen and commiserate with you about the things that are going on or the bad day that you had, my mom's probably not the best one to commiserate with because she doesn't live there. My mom is going to help you to try to see things from a different perspective. She's going to say, well, don't focus on those bad things. Think about all the great things that God has done for you. And she genuinely means it. That's not fake and false in her. That comes from the core of her being and her theology as a person, is she understands that God is a good God. And yes, bad things happen to even good people. The rain falls on the just and the unjust. But her perspective is there's so much more in spite of bad things. There's so much to be thankful for. My dad who, went to heaven April of 2019, who I miss so much. My dad, he had significant health problems for the latter part of his life, for a good chunk of time. He had heart bypass. They bypassed 5 of his valves, and he had 2 strokes. He had 2 bouts of cancer. One was skin cancer and then multiple myeloma, which eventually took his life. But through all of those issues that my dad had with his health, he retained an incredibly positive and optimistic outlook when he was looking at his circumstances. In fact, when I would call him on the phone, I would call to find out how he was doing. And sometimes, again, it would be a little annoying to me. I don't know what I wanted from my parents, for them just to, I guess maybe I wanted them to complain, which is really not true. I'm so thankful that they have had positive attitudes. But I know I wanted to know really how my dad was doing. And so I guess sometimes I thought, well, maybe he's just telling me he's doing fine because he doesn't want to worry me or whatever. So I would press, because when I would call and I'd say, Dad, how you doing? Inevitably, he would always say, doing good, life is good. And I'd say, but Dad, right now, life isn't good, right? I mean, this is going on and this is going on and you've had this happen. And so, I mean, how are you? And he would say, well, son, you've got to understand, when you've been poked and you've been cut on and you've been prodded as much as I have over my life, every day that I wake up and I am breathing, it is a gift from God. I am here today because of the amazing grace of God, because of His grace. That's what he would say. And he would always tell me too, he'd always be looking at and remembering somebody else, like at the cancer treatment center that he would bump into, that would talk about their life and the things that they were going through and the way they were suffering through this disease. And he would say, you know what? I have so much to be thankful for. I mean, I don't deal with that problem. I don't have that symptom. He had all these other things going on, but he didn't focus there. He focused on the fact that he was still, whatever parts of life that he was able to enjoy, that's where he focused. That's a different kind of perspective. We need to understand that every good thing we actually have comes from a good God. Now you may say, well, no, I've worked hard and I've sacrificed and it's been I've earned this through my hard work and my determination. I've earned the things that I have. And that might be true somewhat. But the larger reality, the larger perspective that needs to be seen is that you've simply been maybe a good steward of what God has given to you. Because you have to understand that every place where you succeed is you are succeeding with a gift that God has given, that He has given and enabled you with. God is the giver of all good things. So if that means that you've done it by the sweat of your brow, or you've done it through your intelligence and your intellect, or your innovation and creativity, those are all gifts that God has enabled you with. And so if you've been successful from using those gifts, it's because you've been a good steward of what has already been given to you. God is the giver of those things. God gives you his word to direct you. He gives you health to bless you. He gives you friends to love you, and he gives you a life to glorify him. Every good thing we have comes from God. And instead of an attitude of entitlement, we need to have an attitude of gratitude, which is an overflow of our hearts. That attitude spills out from a heart that is full of that understanding, that deep perspective that God has lavished his love upon us. 3 principles that'll help us choose gratitude. That first one, remembering that the good things that we have come from a good God. Here's the second one. I am not going to let what I want rob me from what I have. I'm not going to let what I want rob me from what I have. I don't know what it is that you want, but I know that most of us, we want things like a better car, a different house. We want to do more traveling. We want some different clothes. We want a bigger TV. I want this. I want that. That is the consumer culture that we live in. Capitalism works because of consumers like me, like you. If we weren't consumers, capitalists would fail overnight, right? But we want more, and we're marketed towards that way, right? People know that companies know that we're not going to just be satisfied with the current version that we have. We want the new and the upgraded version. Now, Solomon addresses this in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verse 9. He says, "Better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite." It seems our culture's appetites for more have only gotten increasingly out of control over time. We live in this culture of convenience. We want more, we want it now, we want it for as little effort as possible. Solomon saw this as a big problem even in his day, because Solomon said this too, there's nothing new under the sun. I mean, the way that this spins out for us might look different than it did back then, but at the heart of it, at the root of it, it's the same. He saw it in his day. That's why he says, better what the eye sees than the roving of the appetite. Whenever we embrace and reflect gratitude, gratitude turns whatever we have into enough because we recognize its blessings. You know, it's that whole thing, and we're about to experience this, right? Next week's Thanksgiving. And one of the things that Thanksgiving definitely does is it encourages not enough, but abundance, right? Because we'll go to these gatherings, or we'll have people to our home, and we eat like crazy. We eat like we're never going to eat again. In our minds, in our culture, that's what we've determined we need to do to show thanks, right? Thanksgiving, let's get together with family and let's eat until we're miserable. And then burp and say, thank you, God. I mean, it's kind of what it is, though, right? I mean, how many times have you gone and had Thanksgiving meal, and does everybody go, that's enough, that's good, enough is enough? If you do that, great, and more power to you. But I probably on Thursday, because I'll be at my sister's in Nashville, and my sister and my brother-in-law are amazing cooks. My other sister, my family's full of good cooks, which is why I am so robust and healthy. So I probably should say enough, but it's awfully hard to do, especially at Thanksgiving. And it's hard to do in our culture and society, period, whether it has to do with food or it has to do with stuff. Let me tell you something about happiness. It's not happy people who are grateful. It's grateful people who are happy. It's grateful people who are happy because they recognize that what they have is simply enough. They can be content. So they choose to not let what they want rob them from what they have, the blessings of what they already have. Think about what you have. I mean, just the normal everyday person living in our Western culture today will probably have, if wanted, 3 meals a day. Some of you have 4, some 5. Some of you need to go back to 3, but I'm not judging. But most of us have enough to eat. Almost everybody here has a bed to sleep in, clothes to wear. Most of you have more than one pair of shoes. Let's just take a minute to talk about shoes, right? Not only do you have enough shoes, but you have shoes for different things. You have shoes for going out on dates. You have shoes for working outside, right? I have shoes that I use when I go and mow the lawn. We have shoes that are dedicated for indoor use, for outdoor use. We have lots of shoes. We have lots of shoes. And some of you have more shoes than others. And you're like, dude, don't dog my shoes. And it's fine. Again, no judgment here. You got a lot of shoes. Great. Hope you have a big closet. But those of you who have a job, right, we are also extraordinarily blessed. Some people don't, but most of us are employed in the United States. Did you know if you make minimum wage, if you're making minimum wage in the United States, you're making approximately 32 times the average wage of half the people who are alive today in the rest of the world. And yet, we are incredibly miserable, wanting more and more and more. Most of you have a phone, and that phone does a lot of things other than just actually being used as a phone. In fact, half the time I think we even forget that it actually is intended to be a phone, because it's basically a computer, and it does all the other things we want. You can FaceTime your friends, you can signal up into the heavens, and it comes back down, and you push a button and pizza shows up at your doorstep, and it all just happens through a cloud or some sort of digital waves, and somebody's probably stealing our information in the process, but that's okay. Most of you are blessed with a phone, but for years I've been upgrading my phone, not because it doesn't work, not because it stopped acting and functioning as a phone, which is what it was intended to do, not because it even stopped functioning in all the other like cool ways to be able to FaceTime or to be able to message or surf the net or get on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It still do all those things. It just wasn't the latest, greatest, didn't have the upgraded camera on it, right? Because we're all video editors and photographers now too, so we all need that latest, greatest equipment on our phone. But that's how we are, right? We got to upgrade. We want the newer thing. I just traded in our 2016 Rogue for a 2020 Rogue. Why? I don't know. Because it's a 2020 Rogue. And it's got lower miles, of course. And there are some better things about it. But the 2016 Rogue was just fine too. I'm just saying, I'm being real. I'm just like you. I fall into it as well. And most of us are healthy right now. Some of us are not. And of course, during a pandemic and that, we're very concerned about our health. But still, most of us are healthy without a lot of pain, consistent pain. Most of you have maybe been on a vacation, maybe not in 2020. All of us, I think, feel like we had to cancel our vacation. Some of you have still gone on vacation. But prior to that, most of you can say that you've been on a vacation. Most of us have great friends, people around us who are encouraging, and yet so many still are dissatisfied. I have a dear friend from high school. Her name is Julie. And Julie is by far one of the kindest, most loving people I have known on the planet. She had a beautiful smile that would absolutely light up the room. She fought her way through breast cancer and went into remission and was cancer-free for several years, only to have the cancer return, and then to return and to fan out into her liver. Eventually, it took her life. And during Julie's final days on this earth, a mutual friend sent Julie a letter. And enclosed was a blank piece of paper where she was asked to write a single word. Whatever word came to mind. It could be a word that reminded her of their friendship or family or her relationship with God or her journey that she'd been on with cancer. And she didn't tell her why. Julie sent back the piece of paper with the following word, and it said, faithful. It said faithful. Her friend took that word to a tattoo artist and had them transfer her handwriting to her foot. Through all of her suffering, Julie's spirit did not change. Her physical body was ravaged with cancer, but her spirit was strong. And her spirit and that light within her that came from God was used to change people's lives. It continues to change people's lives. Even though she is no longer physically on this earth, her story and her spirit changed lives all the way until she went to heaven, and it is continued on beyond her life on this earth. And it's because she had a heart of gratitude. She had a heart of gratitude for her God. It's not happy people who are grateful. It's grateful people who are happy. How do you embrace gratefulness? By recognizing that every good gift comes from a good God. And by not letting what you want rob you from what you have, from the blessings that God has poured out. And the last thing, the last way that we can cultivate a heart of gratitude is by turning every blessing that we have received into praise back to God. This is considered an act of worship before God. Why? Because every time we don't turn a blessing back into praise, guess what it turns into? It turns to pride. It turns to pride. I deserve that. I earned that. I'm entitled to that. I should have more. I deserve more. God, give me better. After all, I'm a better person than that person or that person. I deserve a better life. I deserve more. That's what happens when we don't take the blessings and turn them into praise. Look what David says in Psalms chapter 63, verses 4 and 5. He says this, I will praise you as long as I live, and in your name I will lift up my hands. Look what he says next. It's so powerful. I will be fully satisfied, God, because of your goodness. Not because of my stuff, but because of your goodness. I'm not wanting anything else. I am fully satisfied as with the richest of foods. With singing lips, my mouth will praise you. I will praise you as long as I live. I will turn every blessing back to praise. I love you, God, and I praise you for who you are. Not for what you do, but for who you are, because you are good. This last June, Natalie and I celebrated 22 years of being married. We have two incredible children. We had two incredible children to begin with, and then 15 and a half years later, God blessed us with a third. So 15 and a half years after our daughter Melanie was born, into our lives came this incredible package of joy, and his name is Liam. And all of that sounds great, but I am constantly reminded of just how much of a miracle that really is. It is an absolute miracle. Because I can close my eyes, and in a minute, I remember, and I am back in that place where when Natalie gave birth to Robbie, and many know this story, but I almost lost her in that process. I almost lost her in it after she gave birth to him. And I remember that feeling like it was yesterday. So when I look at my wife and when I look at my daughter, I know it's a miracle. I have to give thanks to God because it's only because of his grace and his love that they are still here. And that not only is my wife here, but that we have a daughter. And then 15 and a half years later, had another son in Liam. Many of you know how much of a miracle Liam is too, because we lost a baby in 2017, after which I was personally gripped with a lot of fear. and a fear that was so intense that I didn't even want to consider the idea of having another child. I wouldn't even consider it. I just wanted to block all of that out. And yet God had a different plan. And he blessed us with Liam. And hardly a day goes by that I look at his face and I don't give thanks to God, knowing that he is here because of God's love and because of his answered prayer. Because if there's only there's only a handful of prayers that I've prayed consistently over my life throughout my walk with Christ. And the biggest one is this. I have prayed many, many times, God, protect me from me. Protect me from myself. You know my heart better than I know my heart. Don't let me make a decision. Don't let me respond and react in emotion in this moment, in this day, that will derail and rob me from a better future that you have for me or that you have for my family. And he has been faithful to answer that prayer more times than I can ever even begin to count or begin to tell you about today. These are just a couple of them. Now, these are big ones, but these are a couple of them. Liam is here because God answered prayer, because God had a better plan. And that was a plan that not to be caged in fear, but to truly live life and to live in the blessing of being able to raise another child. And we can't even imagine what life would be like without him. He is an incredible joy. You want to know how to become more grateful? I'll give you a little exercise. Think of something that you have that's important and pretend like you just lost it. Let me help you with that. So your job, pretend like you just heard that you're losing your job. You're now unemployed. Your health, bad news for you. You were healthy, but now you have stage 4 cancer. Or someone that you love, your mom, your best friend. I hate to tell you this, but they were in a car accident and they didn't make it. You're never going to see them again. Now, those are terrible things, and nobody wants to think about that. But I'm just asking you to stop and consider that just for a second. Take something like that. Pretend like you've lost it. Now, after you take a moment to just absorb what that would feel like, now pretend like it was just given back to you. I didn't lose my job. I don't have cancer. My mom didn't die. It was a mistake. She's still alive. Suddenly, you start thanking God. Wow, that is a really loud truck. We're going to wait for that to go up the hill. Okay, it's gone now. No, but suddenly, if you lost those things and then they were given back to you, suddenly you start thanking God for what you already have, because you have so much to be thankful for. God, I thank you for my health. God, I thank you for my family. I thank you for my marriage. I thank you for my job. I thank you for my friends. I thank you for the fact that I do have a place to worship, a community to worship within. Even if I don't get to see them or worship with them completely the way that I'm used to right now, that it's been super, inconvenient, and it's been hard these last 8 or 9 months. I still am grateful, because I know that I still have a place. I still have my community to worship with, and I can still connect with them, even if it's virtually. God, I'm thankful for that job, even if I feel like I deserve a promotion, or even if I wish I was doing something else. I'm thankful, God, that you provide for me. This exercise will change our perspective. While the rest of the world wants to tear everything down and focus on what's negative, we can choose to remain positive, because we serve a really good God. And if we will allow that to be the lens by which we look at our lives, if we have that proper perspective, then while the rest of the world goes negative, we can still retain a heart that is grateful. We can choose to remain positive. We can recognize that every good thing comes from God. We can choose not to let what we want rob us from what we have. We can choose to take the blessings that have been poured out in our lives and turn them back to praise so that they don't become pride, so that they don't become about what we deserve or what we're entitled to. This is exactly what David did in Psalm chapter 103, verses 2 through 4. David said, "Let all that I am praise the Lord. May I never forget the good things that he does for me. He forgives all my sins. He heals all of my diseases. He redeems me from death and crowns me with love and tender mercies." What has he done for me? He's filled my life with so many good things. He's given me you. And I know as I say that, I'm staring into the face of my phone that's recording me right now, but I know that there are those watching this morning and worshiping with us, and I'm thankful for you. He's given me you, and I'm grateful for that. I'm going to be grateful, and therefore, because I'm grateful, I'm going to be happy. Because my God gives good things to all of his children, and he will never let what I want rob me of what I already have. I've got blessings upon blessings upon blessings, which means I should be turning all of that into praise. I have nothing to be proud of. I am simply one who has been forgiven and been shown mercy and grace, and because of that, I will let all that is within me praise the Lord. He is that good. Let's pray this morning. God, I thank you. I truly thank you as we reflect, as we close this service in a time of worship. God, would you just sweep over our hearts? God, there's a lot of junk through our week that collects there, and we get busy. We get focused on our work or the things that we need to get done. We get frustrated. We fixate on our problems. God, we get grumbly and complaining. And as we learned last week when we listened to Heather, that is the nature of us as people. Whether we're looking, we can just look back in Scripture and see that cycle, and it continues and becomes a challenge for us today. God, you listen to our prayers. You respond. You pour out into our lives, and how quickly we forget all the good things that you have done. And even more importantly, we forget what a good God you are, and that you are deserving of our worship, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. God, I pray that you would help us remember the good things that come from you. Help us to remember not to let what we want rob us from what we have. And God, help us when we look at our blessings, that God, we turn those into praise back to you. We give that praise back unto you because you are the one who is worthy of it, deserves all the praise and all the glory. It's not because of what we deserve or what we're entitled to, because we're not entitled or deserving of your love, and yet you have showered it upon us. And for that, we are grateful. Help us, God. Help us today. God, give each and every one who is listening this morning, bless them and their families. God, cause them this week as they move into this Thanksgiving holiday. God, may this be a time where they could truly reflect. And it's like Natalie said, whether they're able to celebrate as they normally would, or if they've had to make changes because of COVID, God, regardless of the circumstances, may we be full of hearts of gratitude. May that be what overflows. May it not just be our stomachs that are full of food, but may our hearts be full of gratitude and overflowing to you, because you deserve it and you are a great God. We love you today. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. Happy Thanksgiving.